Hey, what's going on everybody? Zach here with Brandon Wound Pickups, and today we are going to be talking once again about this beautiful 1959 Gibson ES-345. If you haven't seen part one, go ahead and watch that now. That's where we unboxed this guitar and we talked about it a little bit. Today, what we're going to be doing is taking a little bit closer look at it. We're going to take a look at the finish and the parts that are left on it, and I guess I'll do a quick recap here. So it's a 59 ES-345 sent in by a friend of mine. Many years ago, this guitar was parted out. It had a set of double white PAF pickups in it that were, at the time, worth probably or nearly enough to completely pay for the guitar. It happens. Doesn't happen quite as much these days, but, you know, it still does happen. So yeah, that's the general idea. We're going to try to put it back into some sort of condition. I don't know the exact plan yet, which is why I wanted to get you guys some content, because I don't know exactly what we're doing with it yet as far as what original parts are going back on. I do have a surprise for you guys though, so stay tuned to the end of the video. We've got something else pretty cool coming in that's going to maybe help out with this. We'll have to see. But yeah, so I've had a number of these, 50s, 60s Gibsons come through over the years, either ones that I've owned or worked on or whatever. So when I'm showing you this guitar, we'll get it on the bench, we'll take off some of the reproduction parts and stuff, and I'm going to try to give you guys sort of an idea what to look for when you're looking to like authenticate a vintage Gibson guitar from this era. I will preface this by saying I am not 100% certified expert on vintage Gibson guitars. Pickups, I'm good with those. You can send me any questions you want about vintage pickups. The guitars themselves I'm pretty familiar with also, but if you have a guitar worth this much money, or a burst, or anything crazy like that, take it to a professional. Like Vic DePra especially is huge with the vintage Gibson stuff. Very knowledgeable. Carter's, Rumble Seat Music, even Gibson to an extent. Matt Kaler over there, he's just a wealth of knowledge. Ask those people, not me. Take anything that I say in this video with a grain of salt, other than if it's about pickups. So, I'm just going to kind of show you, what I've learned over the years. So let's get this thing on the bench and take a look, shall we? Alright guys, we got the guitar on the bench here. Let's go ahead and start out with the finish, which on this guitar is actually very nice. It's in very good condition, and I don't see any evidence that it's ever really been messed with. We have the checking, which is a nice pattern, kind of what you would expect to see. Sometimes in the new Murphy lab guitars, the checking can get a little wonky. And now obviously checking is gonna vary because it's a very, it's a natural process that happens, but it's very unpredictable. It depends on the climate it was in and all that good stuff. But this guitar checks out. We're also gonna be using a blacklight. Now, before we say anything about a blacklight will help you authenticate a vintage guitar and sometimes parts. However, that is not 100% going to tell you if it's an original finish or not, but you can use the blacklight to help you, and I'll kind of explain that a little bit more here in a bit. But yeah, this is what we want to see. Obviously we have reproduction stuff there. The fretboard is really nice. We do have original frets. The reason we can tell that is because we have our binding nibs. Now, one thing I've seen, oh man, look at the figuring in that rosewood. I'll have to put some conditioner on this. One thing I've seen people say sometimes when you look at a 50s Gibson or early 60s fretboard, the binding nibs are usually very small, and you have to almost look pretty hard to see them sometimes. Again, this stuff was all done by hand, so it's going to vary a little bit. But usually you're going to want to look for the small nibs, and this has the correct frets for the era too, which are pretty wide. This guitar does have the original nut on it, which we can see. It is made of nylon, and we can see the lacquer runs over the edge of the nut there. That's good. Moving on up to the headstock, also very nice. Look at the paint on the truss rod nut. That's unusual to see because usually, you get a wrench on that, you adjust it a few times and it all comes off. That's great. The thing we talked about last time we had this thing on camera, you want to look for uniformity across the entire guitar and the case. You want all the parts and everything to kind of look the same. Whereas if you have a perfect guitar and the tuners are completely roached out, they've probably been replaced at some time, or a bridge or pickups or anything like that. Always look for uniformity. So on up to the headstock here, looking really good. We got our nice G there. It's got a little notch in the G that kind of comes in a little bit. That's good. Although Gibson is doing that now, I will say they did finally fix their logo after 30-something years of reissues. Great job on that, Gibson. Look at the headstock wing here. On these old Gibsons, I don't know if the new ones are like this or not. I have to look. The right side wing is always, or generally, going to be a little bit lower than the left side wing. That's just something I've kind of noticed over the years. I saw it once, and I kind of looked at every other one that I've ever seen or taken pictures of, and they all seem to have that, which is kind of strange. So we were talking about finish here. Let's turn the lights off. Let's get a black light out, and I can kind of show you a little bit about, using UV light to help you authenticate. Okay, lights out. So you've probably heard of people using a black light to check for finish stuff. And again, it can be very helpful. So typically, these old Gibson finishes will light up a green sort of color. And it's going to do it in a very specific way. Now, just because it glows green doesn't mean it's the original finish. What we're looking for is any kind of, variations in the way that it glows that would make us want to look a little bit closer in that particular spot. Maybe for overspray or a previous repair or something like that. So, lights on. Again, we're looking for uniformity here. You can see everything looks pretty good. Go a little, oh, that's a reflection. Over here, looks nice. We go to the sides. Again, just uniformity. Neck joint, that's always a good place to look. Everything's looking good so far. We come up to the headstock. Now I know from experience that underneath the truss rod cover on a vintage Gibson should glow a slightly different color than the rest of the headstock, which it does. Looks good. All right, let me flip the guitar over very carefully. Sorry if I'm not paying attention to the camera at the minute. Okay, there we go. Then obviously up here is where you're really going to want to look for headstock repairs. Usually if a guitar has had a headstock repair and it's covered up, you will still generally see at least some evidence of that under blacklight. This looks really good. Look at that. You don't even see any wear on this thing. It's kind of crazy, actually. Again, looking at the heel really close. Well, that's looking good. This guitar glows pretty evenly and exactly what I would expect to see. And given the condition of the rest of the guitar, I'm going to say the finish on this thing is all original. Maybe it's been polished at some point. That's possible. But again, even with that, sometimes when you polish guitars, you look around like in here, you might see evidence of compound or dried white stuff that would say that. Because this guitar is pretty shiny. Could have been polished at some point. If it was, they did a really good job. Okay, so let me go grab a guitar that is from the 50s, and it's a Gibson, and it has had finish work done to it. And we'll show you kind of the difference here. All right, guys, different guitar on the bench. If you've been around the channel for a while, you've probably seen this. This is my 1955 Gibson Les Paul Jr. When I got this guitar, it was spray painted. Thankfully, only the body was spray painted. They left the neck alone, which is great. So I sent it up to Lay's Guitar up in Akron, Ohio, and they refinished just the body. And it looks great. Like if you're just standing there, it looks like a 50s Les Paul Jr. finish. So let's look at it under UV. So it is glowing. Like we said, just because it glows doesn't mean it's original. However, it's glowing a little bit differently, right? It's a little paler. Now again, that doesn't necessarily mean anything, but you could tell that this is kind of a refinished guitar. And we'll come over here to the side. In fact, I'm actually going to flip it over here. That's going to kind of tell the tale. Because only the body was refinished, not the neck. We're going to come over here and we're going to look right at the heel. Boom. Different color. See that? Totally different color green. That looks good. That's where wood is missing. No headstock break on this one, which is nice. You can see it's a totally different green color than the body. That is not uniform. Therefore, we know this guitar has had finish work done on it. Right? Okay. So that's one example. Let me go grab another. I've got a refinished SG in there, and then we'll stop and move on to something else. Okay, one last guitar here, then I promise we'll get back to looking at some other stuff. This has been on the channel before also. Still haven't done anything with this. You know, it's the holidays, it's busy. This is a 65 Gibson SG Special, or at least what's left of one. Now this is interesting because I didn't blacklight this guitar when I got it because I just knew it had already been refinished. It didn't really matter. But I found some cool things here that's going to really, give you guys some examples of what to look for. So we can see it does glow a little bit. It's actually glowing more on camera than it is in person. It's a pretty faint color. But if we look, see that right there? I mean, obviously the hole's been plugged, but that little brighter spot there, you don't see that under the naked eye. So if there was nothing there and the guitar was perfect, that would kind of be a red flag there. Same with over here. That's the infamous SG, jack plate crack. Without the light, it's much less obvious, although you can still tell it's there, but you can kind of see some of the glue residue. Otherwise, not too shabby. Look in here, that's a mess. Now, when I got this guitar, I thought maybe it had the original headstock finish on it, and I believe it actually does. We can see we're talking about the truss rod cover there. Much different color green, much brighter. Could have been oversprayed at some point. It is a little shiny. We could see a little bit of the black paint left on the truss rod nut on this one. All right, now let's flip it over. And here's where it gets kind of interesting. This is all pretty normal. You can see where the tuners were, what's left of the serial number. That's uneventful. Down here, another crack. Again, much more obvious under UV. But check this out. These two little spots. I have no idea what that is. I didn't notice it. You can't see it under regular light. But there was two little repairs right there. And this guitar, again, it's very obvious this guitar has been refinished. Because if we look, it's kind of wavy and bumpy. There's no checking. It's sort of the right color-ish, but it doesn't look right. This guitar has been totally refinished, so you didn't even really need the black light, even though it did tell us some things that I didn't know because I didn't look at it before. All right, so now we're going to move on to parts. Okay, before I turn the lights back on, we're going to start with knobs. So I have 4 knobs here. This one is the one that came with the ES-345, which is new in reproduction. This is like a modern Gibson custom shop knob from, I think, it's one of the true historic parts. It's not, typically Gibson would have came with these on the reissues before that, the cheaper ones. But this is an actual butyrate nice knob from the newer reissues. This is a Montrex Time Machine knob, which is a very good replica. And this is an original 50s gold bonnet knob. So we're going to start with blacklight. On the first one, this is going to be hard to see, guys. The first one is nothing. Maybe the faintest hint of a glow. Yeah, that's just a cheap reproduction. The Gibson knob, it's glowing, but it's mostly glowing on the top half. But again, this is a good looking knob. We'll talk a little bit more about these 3 once we turn the lights back on, because there are some differences. The Montrex knob, it's kind of same situation there. It's still glowing, but not as much on the bottom, right? Then the original 50s knob, well, it is hard to see on camera. It is glowing all the way around, and it is a brighter green color. Typically with knobs, I have seen some that glow, like reproductions that glow close to the originals, but they never quite glow as much in my experience. Look underneath, you got nothing there. That's, I think, the same for all of these, though. Yeah. But, yep, so we know that this is an original knob, but there's other ways you could tell, too, so let's go turn the lights on. Oh, wait, real quick. Pickup rings. One's repro, one's new. Neither one of them glow. The cream ones do, I believe, and some of the black ones will. Some of the black ones had like a really cool swirly pattern in it before under UV, which I've not seen before under reproduction. Let me see if I have another piece of Gibson plastic around here that has that pattern. Okay, I found one. One of these pickup bobbins. See? That's really hard to see. You're not going to be able to see that, but it kind of glows a little green, and it has like a black swirly-ish sort of pattern in it. And you will see some rings like that sometimes. Okay, lights on. We have the same order. We have the cheapy reproduction, we have the Gibson Custom Shop knob, the Montrex Time Machine, and DMC and those are pretty similar to this as well, and then the original knob. So color-wise, that can vary. I've seen originals that were varying different colors. We're not really going to take that into account. We're going to more look at the shape. So we'll start out by coming down here and looking at the sides. They all look pretty similar, right? Especially these three. These three are all really good knobs. This one is much sharper. It's a little taller. The shape isn't quite right. These are pretty easy to spot. This is the Gibson Custom Shop knob, and if we look, this is missing something that the other two have. This dish right here, and that's one thing I will mention about this too. It doesn't really have a dish in the top like the original should. These all three have sort of a dish in it, but if we look, these two have a little bump right where the shaft would go for the pot. The Gibson Custom Shop knob does not have that, or if it does, it's much less pronounced. So that's how you tell what that is. I think these are sold under a few different names too. The Montrex does have that, and then the shape is almost identical, and I've seen knobs that look this color that were original. So from the top, you would have a hard time knowing that this is a reproduction. That's a case where you would use the black light and see how much it glows. Okay, moving on to pickup rings. Let's back out here a little bit. These are so difficult to authenticate now because of the new Gibson reproductions. They are so close. Like if we turn these over here, this is the rings that came off of the 345, and they are actually original, believe it or not, which is kind of cool. You can see, let me make these the same. That's kind of uncanny. The original is a little bit shinier on the bottom, which I have seen before. And the originals get warped pretty easily too, but again, that's something you could probably recreate. These reproduction rings now are getting really close. Doesn't so much matter on the black ones, but with the cream ones, you got to be careful because an original set of cream M69 is like $10,000. Okay, on to bridge and tailpiece. I know that these are reproduction. Back my camera. Whoops, sorry. Guess my camera switched to a different lens there. All right, so we know that these are reproduction because they're brand shiny new. I mean, yeah, that's fairly obvious. But we can still kind of show you, if we turn this one over, there's nothing on the bottom. An original one should say Gibson ABR1 and then have a little sign there. And on the originals, the font on this, I might see if I can find an example of this online. The font of the Gibson ABR1 is going to be really flat across the top, flat and sharp. Whereas a lot of the later castings, the letters kind of got rounded off a little bit. Again, I'll try to throw up a picture of that if I can. Tailpiece, these look really good. We know this is not obviously original. This was a wraparound at some point. It's made out of the correct material, lightweight aluminum. If we flip it over, we can see they did a pretty good job with this. It looks like this is a Clusen, I'm guessing by the K. But we could see that line right there looks pretty good. That's on the originals. And even off on the sides here, on the originals, they do have some like file marks like that. However, these are too perfect. On the originals, I do have one here, but I really don't want to pull it off the guitar to show you. Again, maybe I'll look for a picture. On the ends, on the original tail pieces, both wraparound and the stop tails, you're going to see file marks. But they're not going to be perfectly straight and nice like that. They're going to be pretty rough. Same with the saddles on the originals. A lot of that stuff was pretty crude at the time, especially with the hardware. Pickups, I'm not going to get into pickups too much. Obviously, one, because the 345 doesn't have any, and two, I've covered PAF pickups and P90s so many times on this channel. You could go back and look through some of my authentication videos for those. Okay, I think we're getting pretty close here. We can look at the truss rod cover real quick, which I haven't even looked at. It's not original. It's a little too shiny, a little too nice. On some of the originals, you will see little ripples in this. Not all, though. Kind of depends on the era. And this white layer will be stepped down a notch from the black, which this one kind of is, but it's more drastic on the originals. I think I've got one around here somewhere. Oh, it doesn't really matter. Lots of people have talked about this. These aren't that crazy expensive anyways. but again, you're going to see a big step, sometimes a ripple. The edges are not going to be this kind of white color. This is probably just a Gibson reproduction. Okay, so let's get the guitar back up on the bench, or maybe in the other room if I'm done with it. Sorry, it's been kind of a long video, but hopefully this has helped you guys at least a little bit. One last thing to talk about on the guitar, and that is the tuners. These are reproduction Kluson tuners, which, to be perfectly honest, are still very, very close to the originals. If we look down the middle, it says on the case Kluson Deluxe. Now, on an original Kluson Deluxe tuner, it's going to spell it all the way out to the bottom. Your E is going to be right here. On the reproductions, it doesn't do that. Although I think maybe DMC tuners may have had it spelled out all the way to the end. There's a couple other ways to tell that, but reproduction tuners on one of these things isn't such a big deal anyways. They kind of work better. Let's see, anything else? The strap button actually might be original on this, and I think the pickguard bracket is too. There's a couple of things, but like the bridge, the tailpiece, all that stuff was new. I think that's about it, guys. Again, sorry this has been such a long video, but you know, there's a lot to talk about. So let's go back into the other room, wrap this thing up, and tell you what I was going to tell you. Alright guys, that's going to wrap it up for part 2. Hopefully we'll have something a little bit more exciting to do in part 3, which I think we will. Hopefully that helped you guys a little bit. I mean, again, take your guitar to a professional. That's some of the things that I've noticed over the years from working on them and owning them and that kind of stuff. But again, take it to a professional. But if you have any pickup questions, I'm your guy. Okay, so I told you guys we had a surprise. There's another one of these coming. And that's what I'll say for now, but that's gonna kind of help decide what we do to this. I think the other one is a 63 ES-345, and I'll leave it at that. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you made it to the end of this, congratulations, because that was very long and I'm tired of talking, and I'm sure you guys are tired of listening. So this will be the last video for the year. Happy New Year's, happy holidays. Hope you guys have had a great time. Take it easy, and we'll see you next time.